Hello, everyone. Welcome to Easy Economics. If you've been revising but still feel stuck, don't worry, because you're not alone. The expressions I see and the energy you bring is all telling me one thing, that we are ready to nail this exam. So, without wasting any time, let's quickly dive in because every minute counts. All right. EcoChamps 2281 and 0455. This is for you. First and foremost, ensure your basics prior to your exam. You need to arrive at the exam venue at least 15 minutes before your paper. Give yourself ample of settling time. Hush all the negative thoughts that run across your mind. I know exams are tough, but so are you. We have been doing this for the entire year. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. Have trust in yourself and in the Almighty. Say a small prayer and just begin. Strategic time management is the second most important thing you need to ensure. Your paper duration is 2 hours 15 minutes. Maximum amount of time that you must spend on section A must not exceed 45 minutes. I repeat, not more than 45 minutes to be spent in section A. That includes reading the case, structuring your answers, and writing the responses. Section B, out of 4, you need to do any 3 questions. Again, not exceeding 30 minutes per question in section B. That's how you're going to wisely allocate your time, ensuring that yes, you answered all the parts according to the marks within the specified time period. How are you going to be attempting the paper? Again, there are 2 schools of thought. A, you can solve only section A first and then move on to section B once you're done with section A. Or the other school of thought which I follow is, first I just quickly go through the paper. That's how I used to do it when I was a student, and that's how I recommend my students. But then again, it's completely onto your discretion, onto your comfort level, whichever way you find it feasible enough. If you find it the other way around, you're good to go with that. However, I would recommend my students to go around, see section B, questions, choose the questions which you think you are going to attempt, so that once you're done with section A, you have a clear idea of which questions to jumpstart on without wasting any further time. All right. Which questions to select is the major question as far as section B is concerned, because we all know section A is compulsory, right? There are 8 parts in section A. But what about section B? Well, you've got a choice. Now, how are you going to decide which questions you are going to choose in section B depends on part C and part D of your section B questions. Why? Because part C and part D of your section B makes up to how many marks? 14 marks. It includes an analyze question and a discuss question. The initial 2 parts, A and B, make up only 6 marks. So do not base your decisions looking at part A and part B. Base your decision looking at part C and part D of section B questions, the questions in which you think you can best write your responses as per the analysis is required or as per a discussion is required. Attempt those questions. Think wisely and select. Now, how are you going to write your answers? You're just not going to write the answers for the sake of writing it. You're going to write high quality responses. Why? Because we are heading for what? NA star, right? So, how are you going to produce your answers? You're going to first and the foremost, you are going to look at the command words. Each question has a certain command word, and we have done amples of past paper practice that tell us what to write in each part, looking at the command word, looking at the marks allocated per part. We know how to structure our answers. We know how to format our answers and score high. For instance, if it's written state, we know we need to just express in clear terms If it's identify, you just need to name or select or recognize whatever the part is asking us from the source given. Again, give and identify is the same thing. If it's asking for an explanation, here you need to make in relationships between things, between two variables. You need to provide why with your reasoning. Again, if it's talking about a calculation, so they must have given you some certain figures or facts, and you're going to use a formula in order to calculate something which you're asking, a percentage or whatever statistics you are referring to. If it's asking you for a definition, sometimes students are unable to produce a correct, precise definition, though you should not. However, if in certain cases you are unable to, your explanation, your definition must not exceed more than 2 lines, right? Otherwise, it will be an explanation and not a definition. But as far as definition is concerned, it requires a precise meaning, all right? Discuss questions. We have been doing it. I have posted several tutorials specifically targeting and discuss questions, section B questions. We know what format to follow. You need to produce in both sides of the argument and brush it off with a well-balanced conclusion, right? Develop that logical analysis, develop that key chain analysis, have a structured response. Again, in analyze question, now analyze questions in section A and analyzing questions in section B follow a very different format. But again, if you want any further guidance, you can refer to my tutorials. The last I posted was of March 2025, contains both of section B and section A. You can have a look at it in order to have an idea of how to go about answering analyze questions in section A as well. Describe is again, you need to give the characteristics and tell about the features. You're going to use economic terms in your answers. You're going to write according to the marks. If it's a 2-mark question, there's no point in explaining further that. Why? Because what are the maximum marks you can get? 2. So there's no point in wasting your time. If you've written 2 points, it's good to go. You need not to write more than that, because you're going to be wasting time and reducing your time, which could be spent in analyze questions or questions which ask us for a more thoughtful discussion, right, which carry more weightage. Mind map your answers. That's very important to brainstorm your answers. Whenever you read the question, have a brainstorming of what to write in the questions. Structure your points, how you're going to go about answering it in order to ensure that, yes, you score high. Follow the suggested format. Just don't write for the sake of writing it. Whatever formats we have practiced, follow that religiously. Develop a coherent analysis, a clear explanation, well-developed, thoughtful answers are going to make you score high. Now, what I have done is that this time I have selected a question. It came in February, March 2020. It's of 0 to 455, variant 22. Now, what I've done is for part C and part D, I have included the actual student responses to this paper in order to give you an idea of how to structure your answers and write accordingly, right? Now, the question says the Chinese government reformed the Chinese tax system in 2016. It extended VAT from the sale of goods to the sale of services, enabling it to cut the corporation tax rate. Taxes on goods and services are usually regressive. The Chinese government wanted to raise living standards and hoped that a cut in the tax rate would attract MNCs. Now, to reduce the tax rates, thinking that MNCs would be attracted. So, first question, state 2 reasons for levying taxes. So, you're just going to give in 2 reasons why a government imposes taxes. So, this means what? It's a 2-mark question. So, 1 mark for 1 point, the second mark for the second point. So, what could be the marks? What could be the points? In order to increase revenue, in order to really cut down on imports, or it could be in order to reduce the consumption of demerit goods, or in order to reduce demand, pull inflation. Mention any 2 points and you're good to go with 2 marks. Part B, explain the difference between a progressive tax and a regressive tax. Now, over here, I have developed this P account. I have produced a columnar comparison, but however, you are going to paragraph your answer. What could you have said? Now, how many marks it is? It's a 4-mark question. That means One reason, 1 mark. Again, a counter reason for the regressive. Then the third explanation for a regressive and for a progressive. So what you're going to say, you are going to say that progressive tax falls more heavily on the high income earners or on the rich, whereas regressive taxes falls heavily on low income earners. Secondly, you could say that progressive tax makes income more evenly distributed, however, regressive tax makes income less evenly distributed. Or you could have said progressive tax system takes in a larger proportion of the income of rich, whereas regressive tax takes a larger proportion of the income of the poor or the low earners. You've chosen, made a comparison, and you're good to go with 4 marks. All right. And yes, you can also give an example. For instance, in progressive taxes, it could be direct taxes, which means income tax or profit tax or wealth tax. And what about regressive? Indirect taxes, VAT, sales, GST, right? You've done that for 4 marks. All right, part C. Now, what was question? Part C asked us analyze how a cut in the rate of corporation tax and income tax may influence the number of MNCs setting up in the country. Now, they are asking us, you need to analyze how a reduction in the corporation tax and income tax is attracting an MNC to set up in China, in the country. It's a 6 mark question. Now, let's see what this candidate has written. Now, this candidate scored a 5 on 6 in this answer. Now, let's see what has the candidate written. Now, notice how the paragraphs have been structured, how the points have been written, and how the points have been developed, how the coherent analysis have been developed. A cut in the rate of corporation tax would increase the number of MNCs setting up in a country as it would lower their cost of production. Now, this is the first point. Now, see how the connection is made. This may enable them to lower prices for their products, which would increase demand for producing in the products that is price elastic, products that are price elastic. This would increase their revenue and profit and hence encourage them to set up in country. The second point, a cut in the rate of income tax would also encourage a larger number of MNCs to set up in the country. Lower income tax means a higher disposable income and consumers have more purchasing power, thus increasing demand for the MNC's products, which would increase profits as well. Moreover, to a cut in income tax rates may encourage recipients of unemployment benefits to look for jobs as it would increase their incentive to work. Therefore, MNCs may want to set up in the country as there would be a greater availability of labor. Now you see how the points were mentioned and an analysis, a chain link was also developed. Now let's look at part D. I hope it's clear and you understood how to write this answer. Part D. Part D asked us, again, it's a discussed question whether or not people in high income country always enjoy a higher living standard than those in a low income country. Now, so what do you think? People in high income country are always experiencing a higher living standard than those in low income country or not? Now, it's an 8 mark question. Now, what could you have said? You could have said that maybe they might be able to enjoy better quality goods and services, better health care, higher life expectancy, better education, better working conditions, right? They may be able to save more. But you could also have said that maybe income would have been more unevenly distributed, right? Or it could be that some people might not be better off, they might still be living in poverty. Or you could have said pollution in the country could have been higher. Or you could have said the tax rate could have been high. Or maybe the cost of living was still high, right? So these could have been the points. Now let's see how this candidate has written the answer such that it has scored an 8 on 8. It's a level 3 response and that too yielding maximum marks. Now let's see what has the candidate written. People in high income countries are more likely to enjoy a higher living standard as GDP per head is likely to be higher, so average incomes are greater as well. Higher incomes allow people to increase their disposable income and allow people to spend more on goods and services as they have more purchasing power. Fewer people are likely to be in poverty, which means that most can afford at least the basic necessities. Furthermore, government tax revenue is likely to be higher, so the government can spend more on welfare benefits like healthcare and education, raising living standards. Moreover, a high income country may not necessarily have better living standards. Now it's coming to the drawbacks. Notice it has mentioned the positives, now it's mentioning the drawbacks. How did it begin the answer? Moreover, a high income country, now it's telling you the pitfalls. Moreover, a high income country may not necessarily have better living standards if the high level of output is due to long working hours, since this means reduced leisure time and more stress. Now, this point was not mentioned in the marking scheme, but yet this candidate has written, and this is the question which has been frequently asked by my students, that can we mention points which are not in the marking scheme but yet are relevant? And I've always said that yes, as long as the reasons are logical and you supported them with well developed, thoughtful analysis, it's good to go. If the working conditions are poor, living standards could be lower in a high income country. In addition, production of a large number of goods and services in the economy could result in environmental damage like increased pollution. Furthermore, a high income country may not result in high living standards for all people, as the distribution of income could be uneven. So, the extremely poor would have lower living standards. The income could also be unevenly distributed between males and females. So, males may enjoy a higher quality of life while females may not. Again, this point was not mentioned, that they have made a comparison between gender, right? But you could do that as long as you're supporting it with a logical reasoning. Under the circumstances, it is possible that some people in low income countries may be enjoying better living standards than those in high income countries. This candidate scored a 8 on it. Now, for your analysis, I have also included another candidate's response that was able to score a 6 on 8. Now, let's see how this candidate could have further improved upon the answer, because it just was able to manage getting a level 3 score, right? A 6. It could have been a 7 or even an 8. So, it could have done a little more development in its answers and it could also have scored an 8. Now, what has this candidate written? People living in a high income country could have low living standards due to income inequality. Average income may be higher than what money is earning, which makes average living standards lower than that of a country with a lower income but more equality. Secondly, it may be a high income country, but if the country has a higher population, then living spaces may be small and or cramped, or insufficient housing may not be available even if incomes are high, thus causing living standard to be lower than that of a low population. Now again, housing conditions was not there mentioned, but now here it's mentioned. To be lower than that of a low population, low income country. Thirdly, the income may be higher in a country, but its real value may be lesser than that of a low income countries if inflation is high. However, now it's talking about the drawbacks. If income is high, basic necessities and luxury goods may be more affordable, thus living standards may be higher. Moreover, affordability of health services and education may be higher, thus raising living standards as compared to low income countries. Hence, health facilities and education arrangement be as advanced. High income is often a sign of a developed country and a low income of developing. Therefore, because developed countries have lesser absolute poverty, living standards may be better. So now you've seen that though the points were mentioned, but yes, because the points were abruptly mentioned and they were not more developed, the candidate was able to score a 6. The points were there, but yet if you could have added in a more detail and developed that link chain analysis, this candidate could also have scored an 8 on 8. Now, this paper 2 tomorrow is of how much percentage? It's a what? The weightage is 70%, right? So I expect all my eco champs to ensure that they have written careful, thoughtful answers. 70% weightage, don't take it easy. Just keep your focus, trust your preparation, give it your best. You've got this. All my prayers are with you. Let's nail our paper 2 tomorrow. All my prayers are with you. Wishing you all the very best.